The initial chapter of the artificial intelligence revolution was defined by breakthrough after breakthrough, transformative models, dazzling demos, and the thrill of seeing machines reason, write, and create like never before. The spotlight was firmly on the models: GPT, Gemini, Claude, and the race to see which one could scale higher, think faster, and impress more investors. But that era is over. We have moved beyond the prologue. Now, the stage has shifted, not to the lab, but to the data center. The real battle for AI supremacy is no longer being fought on the level of algorithms or parameters. It is being waged in the cold, humming halls of cloud infrastructure, in boardrooms where multi-billion-dollar compute contracts are signed, and in the fine print of API licensing agreements that will shape the technological landscape for a generation. This is the middle game. And if the opening moves were about innovation, this phase is about power systemic, structural, inescapable control over the very foundation upon which AI runs. Let's start by understanding the pivot. For years, artificial intelligence competition was judged by model rankings, leaderboards, and the raw capability of large language models. A better model meant more users, more headlines, more investor confidence. OpenAI's GPT-3 in 2020 lit the fuse. GPT-4 raised the bar. But as models continue to improve incrementally, the marginal gains in performance are no longer enough to justify massive new investments. What is justifying those investments is something far more durable: infrastructure. The ability to deliver AI at scale, reliably, securely, and at low latency depends not on who has the smartest model, but on who owns the compute, the networks, the data pipelines, and the long-term contracts that lock customers in. Control over infrastructure creates what economists call a moat: deep, wide, and hard to cross. And the current king of moat building in enterprise AI is Microsoft. Microsoft's dominance didn't come from building its own model. It came from recognizing early that owning the rails beats owning the train. Their partnership with OpenAI, initiated with a $1 billion investment in 2019, and expanded repeatedly since, has evolved into one of the most consequential strategic alliances in tech history. Today, Microsoft holds roughly 30% of OpenAI, a stake that may well appreciate into the hundreds of billions. But more telling than equity is the revenue sharing structure. Microsoft takes 20% of OpenAI's direct revenue from consumer products like ChatGPT+, with that clause extending through 2030. In return, OpenAI gets access to Microsoft's Azure cloud at preferential rates. And Microsoft shares 20% of revenue from its own AI-powered services like Azure, OpenAI, and Bing AI back to OpenAI. On the surface, this looks like a symmetrical partnership. In reality, it is anything but, because the financial reality for OpenAI is stark. It loses approximately $2 for every $1 of revenue it generates. This isn't a short-term burn to fuel growth. It's a structural imbalance in its unit economics. Inference, the act of running AI models for user queries, is astronomically expensive, especially at OpenAI's scale. The cost of maintaining thousands of GPUs, cooling them, networking them, and powering them is immense. And consumer pricing, even at $20 per month for ChatGPT+, doesn't come close to covering those costs. At 800 million weekly users, only 5% are paying subscribers. The math simply doesn't work without massive external capital. That's where Microsoft steps in. It doesn't just provide cloud infrastructure. It provides a financial lifeline. Microsoft's capital and Azure ecosystem keep OpenAI operational. But that dependency cuts both ways. The OpenAI brand, its cutting-edge models, and its massive user base are what fuel demand for Azure. Enterprises that once had no reason to engage with Microsoft's cloud are now migrating workloads to access GPT-4 or future models through Copilot, Microsoft 365 integrations, and Azure AI services. Here is the crux. Microsoft's entire AI growth narrative, embedded in its $4 trillion valuation, is now tethered to OpenAI's continued success and exclusivity. That creates a powerful but also fragile mutual dependency. If OpenAI fails to monetize, Microsoft keeps pouring capital into a losing venture. If OpenAI ever moves off Azure, Microsoft loses not just a partner, but the centerpiece of its AI strategy. And given that Microsoft has exclusive rights to host OpenAI's API until AGI is officially verified, that migration is not just expensive, it's contractually blocked. This isn't just a business arrangement, it's a lock-in engineered at the architectural level. Now, consider what this means for enterprises. A company running AI on GPT-5 or using fine-tuned versions of OpenAI's models has no choice: to access the API, to maintain security, to integrate with internal systems, to comply with data regulations. they must route through Azure. Even if their core cloud infrastructure is on AWS or Google Cloud, they now need an Azure footprint. That forces integration layers, data pipelines, identity systems, and compliance frameworks into Microsoft's ecosystem. Reversing that decision would mean rewriting entire applications, retraining teams, and risking months of downtime. The switching cost is so high that many enterprises will simply stay put, cementing Azure as the de facto platform for OpenAI-powered AI. Regardless of its underlying cloud market share, it's just 29%. But not every player accepted this outcome. Enter Anthropic, founded by former OpenAI researchers who left over concerns about commercialization and safety. Anthropic made a conscious decision to avoid dependence on any single cloud provider. Their strategy wasn't about choosing a side. It was about refusing to pick one. Instead, they secured massive concurrent compute investments from all three hyperscalers. Google committed over $1 billion, 1 million TPUs, and 1 gigawatt of power. Amazon Web Services pledged $8 billion and 1 million Trainium chips. Microsoft followed with a $30 billion Azure commitment. This multi-cloud approach is unprecedented and intentionally. So the goal was independence. By being deeply embedded in AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, Anthropic cannot be held hostage by any one vendor. They can negotiate better terms, play providers against each other, and ensure their survival even if one cloud relationship sours. But the bigger advantage is operational flexibility. Unlike OpenAI, whose consumer product demands real-time, low-latency inference from centralized clusters, Anthropic targets enterprise clients, banks, insurers, pharma companies, whose AI workloads are primarily batch-oriented. These jobs can be scheduled, distributed, and optimized across different clouds based on cost, availability, or performance. That changes everything economically. Anthropic generates approximately 85% of its revenue from enterprise API usage, not consumer subscriptions. Enterprise contracts are longer term, higher value, and carry better margins. There's no need to offer free tiers to millions of users, no costly acquisition funnels, no reliance on viral growth. Instead, revenue scales directly with usage on the customer's terms, but optimized on Anthropic's infrastructure agnosticism. Here is why this model is sustainable when OpenAI's is not. Enterprise workloads can be delayed, compressed, or rerouted based on compute availability. If Google's TPUs are cheaper at 3A, Pacific, Anthropic can run jobs there. If AWS has spare Trainium capacity during off-peak hours, workloads shift automatically. This distributed cost-optimized approach lowers inference costs and improves utilization rates, something impossible for OpenAI's real-time, high-availability consumer platform. As a result, Anthropic achieves better unit economics, a more predictable revenue stream, and a path to profitability that doesn't depend on endless capital infusions. From the outside, the AI race still looks like a contest between models. But the hyperscalers know the truth. The war is not for the algorithm. It's for the stack. Microsoft used OpenAI as a Trojan horse to insert itself into every enterprise AI conversation. Google and Amazon saw that threat and responded by backing Anthropic, not to win model leadership, but to preserve a foundational AI model outside Microsoft's control. AWS doesn't care if Claude is slightly behind GPT-4. What AWS cares about is that enterprises using Anthropic can do so entirely within AWS Bedrock without touching Azure. The same goes for Google. Their investment in Anthropic isn't just financial, it's strategic insurance. If every major AI deployment requires Azure, Google Cloud's long-term relevance in AI is in jeopardy. By enabling Anthropic to run natively on Vertex AI, Google ensures it remains in the game. And let's be clear, this isn't just about cloud vendors. It's about who controls the next decade of innovation. The companies that own the compute, the networking, the scale, and the contracts will be the gatekeepers of AI. They decide which models run where, at what cost, under what conditions. They collect the revenue, gather the data, and define the standards for investors. This changes the calculus. Valuations aren't just about user growth or click-through rates anymore. They're about infrastructure, leverage, ecosystem, entrenchment, and the stickiness of integration. A cloud provider with deep AI partnerships gains pricing power, retention advantages, and cross-sell opportunities that compound over time. A model company without infrastructure control, no matter how technically brilliant, risks becoming a commodity, a feature inside someone else's platform. We are witnessing a realignment of power. The architects of this new era aren't just engineers or researchers. They're deal makers, negotiators, and corporate strategists who understand that in the age of AI, the most valuable asset isn't intelligence. It's dependency. The ability to make another company so reliant on your infrastructure that leaving is not a business decision, but a transformational risk. The opening moves of AI were about what the technology could do. The middle game is about who controls the system that makes it possible. And in this game, the winner isn't the one with the smartest model. It's the one who owns the grid on which every model runs.